You are spending what percentage of your clients' budgets on manual bids right now? Cost caps, bid caps, target ROAS for Facebook ads. What percentage of the total spend across all of Kynship's clients, your agency, is being spent on manual bids right now?
I'm not in the business of burning money, Andrew. 100%.
Is it literally 100%?
100%.
You're actually beating me then. I have some small auto bid spends on some retention campaigns, just because the numbers are so small that, 100%.
We can go down that lane as well, but 100%.
Yeah. Okay. 100. So breakdown: bid caps, cost caps, target ROAS. Like, I'm sure you don't have like a percentage number of how much is each, but how much are you spending in each? Like, what do you think the breakdown is basically?
I'd probably say, 80% on cost controls, like cost per result goal, and then maybe 20%. I would even say 90-10 potentially. The only times we use minimum ROAS goal, right, is when the outcome is volatile, right? You can't really, it's hard to predict the AOV if you're running to a collection page, something along those lines.
You should try especially for the right client, you should layer on target ROAS on top of your cost cap stuff. There's the reason why I do that is that there's a different optimization. And what I'll also always do is set it to a different time window. So if I'm running 7 DC cost cap or 7 DC bid cap, I add, let's say for me, it'd be 7 DC bid cap. I would also add a 1 DC target ROAS. And the reason why is like, I'm aiming at, typically I actually do it the other way. It would be 1 DC bid cap, 7 DC target ROAS. And it's because the different optimization, I think, matters. Like, you actually do reach different customers, and often I see incremental spend. So it's like, I'll see like, much higher CPM on my highest value campaigns, because this is the distinction that people I think sometimes don't think about, is that bid caps and cost caps are running on a lowest cost model, right? Like, i.e. it's targeting the lowest cost of conversion. Target ROAS campaigns are running on highest value, right? So they're going to optimize for a higher value customer. And so sometimes there will be increment. If you sort of think about, if you imagine every customer is on a spectrum here on like lower AOV to higher AOV, right? That kind of deal. If they're all on that spectrum, then probably like at some point, let's say here's the higher AOV customers. What I think is that like a lot of people are kind of in the middle, and they're like, both optimization methods will reach them. And so you're probably getting the vast majority of those people, but then there's people on either edge who one of them will leave on the table, basically.
Right.
And so ends up being like, I just take the same ads, duplicate them into the highest value, and it ends up being, incremental spend. Like, I have a client recently where we did this, and it was probably 30 or 40% more spend. Like, it was a lot. So,
Well, and at the end of the day, if it's not there, if the incremental spend's not there, it just won't spend. So
exactly.
But you're 100% correct though. They're optimizing for different things. So you might as well do that.
Yeah. Okay. So so you're running 100% of your clients spend. So what kind of clients? Like, who is Kinship? You are the co-CEO of an agency, Kinship. What kind of clients is Kinship serving? Like, is this all small accounts? Because this is like a concern people have about manual bids, which is that like, it works great if you're, at $5 million or whatever, but like big accounts can't do it.
Yeah, no. Right. I mean, just prior to our hitting the go button on this podcast, Andrew and I were talking about one of our clients spending $400K over the weekend completely on cost caps across the board, right? You do the math, that levels up to a decent amount of spend over the course of the month. But I mean, our ideal client, our typical client, 5 to 20 annual revenue, I would say $1 million, and then direct to consumer e-commerce business, of course, and probably a majority of the time within health and wellness, a lot of subscription type brands. That's kind of,
who ends up being in there. Yeah. Those are all the brands that can most easily deploy dollars on Meta in general. What you're talking about, you just described brands where customers,
the big spenders.
They're worth a lot. Customers are just worth a lot of money to them. And you guys reach above that $20 million threshold too, right? You got a couple guys who are. Yeah.
I'm giving you my sweet spot. Less hoops. Really come alongside the founder But yes, we serve people, up to 100 million a lot of times. Yeah.
Monthly spends, you're seeing 7-figure monthly spends, 100% cost caps, 100% bid caps, 100% target. 100% manual bids.
Yes. Again, not many people are spending 7 figures per month between that 5 to 20. But yes, we do have clients spending 7 figures completely on cost caps.
Yeah. Okay, when you take a client that's new and you switch them over to cost caps for the first time, what is your general expectation at this point of whether or not their spend will be about the same, increase, or decrease? And same question for the ROAS. Like when you do that, what do you generally think is going to happen?
So at this point, well, anything can really happen. But at this point, what we're communicating is, well, it depends. You got to give me a hypothetical too. Like, okay, recently, I'll just give you this one hypothetical that we just went through. Recently, this brand was only running 100 pieces of their creative, but they had 1,500 assets of unused creative from like basically their seeding efforts that they were doing internally on their own. So a bunch of UGC content posted by creators on social media that they had usage rights to, but they didn't repurpose or use. And they were sitting on 1,500. I knew right from the jump, they've only ran 100. We have 1,500. We're going to put this all into a cost control environment where, hey, there's only upside and you have the downside protection. I know we're going to make an immediate impact there. Yeah. But let's say all variables.
At least one of those pieces of content is going to work.
Oh man. And let me, and Drew, it blew up like scaled spend through the roof.
So how much percentage increase in spend did you get when you launched those?
So we did have the ability to decrease their AMER efficiency as well. We're at increased spend, and it lent itself to their overall profitability goal. So there was a decrease in efficiency to hit their overall profitability goal at the increased spend. But you decreased
the ratio metric of AMER, but you probably increased the total contribution dollars.
Correct. Exactly right. So
that's fine.
Exactly right.
That's normal, right? If you have a 3-to-1 AMER, but your target is a 2-to-1, the more spend you get through, your AMER is going to come down.
People always just ask, like, was it the same efficiency? Well, actually, it leads to overall more efficiency, but nonetheless, but yes, 2 to 3x the spend.
Yeah, this is actually where sometimes
went through the roof.
I was just actually talking about this, by the way, with an internal guy. Just like sometimes this is where AMER is an unhelpful metric, or ROAS is an unhelpful, and it's a blended average. The ratio, it doesn't say anything about the volume, because like what you actually might, the target ad dollars or the target contribution dollars as a raw metric can actually be more useful. I mean, the ratio matters still, but like the actual contribution dollars matters because like you just said, right? Like you could actually spend more money, drag your blended average down, and it's a way better outcome for the business, right? So,
exactly.
Okay, so assuming that though, so take that client, right? How much more did they end up spending as a percentage of their spend before they came to you?
So they increased their spend by 200 to 300% in the month one. Again, now, okay, this is an outlier. This is a case study, 100%. And again, that's why I said, what's the scenario? This scenario, I had 15x the amount of creative that was not being used, right? So that's insane amount of opportunity. I knew that was a winner right from the jump. But if all variables are the same and all we're doing is switching up onto cost controls, within month one, what we're typically communicating, hey, within month one, you're going to see a similar level of performance. And as we get the creative pipelines going, we're going to get more out of here. And as we get into optimization, get out of the learning phase, as we reset things, because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm curious to hear your 2 cents on this. I truly feel like a lot of these bid optimizations will ultimately end up at the same place long-term. What cost controls do and what manual bids do for you is that downside protection where you just don't waste anything on the losers in comparison to, the highest volume types environment.
Yeah. I basically think that, I was going back and forth with Nate Lagace about this on Twitter a little bit. He was saying if it's good to spend more, if you agree with that basic principle, and this is one thing Nate harps on a lot, is the idea that like he wants to grow his business, so he wants to deploy the ad dollars. And that's like part of the point, and I think he's right about that. That is like there's a way in which it's just good for your business to deploy ad dollars. This can be, the sort of other side of that pole is like, you should have Taylor Holiday in your ear saying like, be profitable. So those are both, I think, valuable perspectives, and, they're going to, how they play out in each business in terms of which devil or angel on your shoulder you listen to. It's probably going to change which one is the devil and which one is the angel, depending on your business. Right. But what I was gonna say was he said, why would you want to spend on cost controls if you're trying to spend more money? And my answer was because usually cost controls creates more spend, not less. This is like one of the big myths, I think, is that like it's on top of profitability. And because the thing that everybody underrates is that the most efficient use of your next dollar is the pathway to spending more money. So cutting off bad spend, what you see go away is the like under target ROAS, right? You eliminate the creative testing campaign, and suddenly there's a big tranche of your spend that is gone. So now your blended average ROAS goes up, right? And that's like a bunch of money you get back. But what people underestimate is how much that the creative testing campaign has a second cost that they can't see, or just like ad spending under target has a second cost that they can't see. And that second cost is the money that's being spent on ads that could have been spent on other ads, right? For like, let's say, Taylor, I'm trying to advertise to you in your feed. If I serve you ad A and it's a worse ad than ad B, then ad A creates cost, not only in that it's like, zero ROAS because you don't click on it and buy, right? So there's the obvious cost, right? It's like delivery under target, right? But the other thing is it blocks, because your feed is going to have my ad, it blocks the good ad B, the good ad from getting into your feed. And so the most efficient deployment of the dollars creates more total spend on both sides. Like, so it eliminates the bad spend on the bottom, but it also amplifies the good spend on top. And I think people really underestimate how valuable that is. And so my expectation, generally speaking, is that cost controls will create more spend or the same amount of spend. It's really rare, unless a brand is like, most brands just can't spend that many bad dollars. Like they can't afford to do it. So they're not actually spending below target that much, except for their stupid creative testing campaigns. And
I hope we go into that today.
Yeah. Well, and so what I expect though is not really a big decrease in spend, because they're already probably spending to their target ROAS. But what I expect is either a similar spend at a higher ROAS or more spend in most cases.
Yeah, in month one, we're typically just communicating, we're in the client service space, right? If it's all the variables are the same, we're typically communicating. Month one, it'll be similar just because we're re-optimizing, resetting everything. But just to piggyback off what you're saying, where you can expect more spend, again, with all cost controls, how are we setting up budgets? We're setting cost controls with inflated budgets. And so when the opportunity is there, say on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or say BFCM, it will automatically throttle spend, and it removes any human error, right? It removes any opportunity for you to reset optimization as well, with like manually increasing budgets significantly. No, the budget is already set at an extremely high clip. And so when the opportunity is there, it throttles it to maximize that moment. And then on the Monday thereafter, or the Tuesday after the weekend, it's going to pull itself back. So it eliminates all this manual, touching the campaigns and human error, the timing of it. No, it's just already there. It's optimized, it's set, it's rolling.
The day of the week effect is another thing that people really underestimate. I just looked, we're recording on a Wednesday. I just looked at an account of mine and it's spending so little money right now today. And then I look at another account and it's the same thing. And I look at another account, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, it's beautiful. It's just because it's Wednesday, right? Whereas like on Saturday and Sunday, same exact ads, same exact accounts, they were spending 3x what they spent today. Like, it's a really big deal. The day of the week effect really matters. And it's another place where like the deployment of the dollars really makes a big difference.
Right. And then you bring in a BFCM moment and it's just like 10x crazy that. Yeah. But this is a weekly thing. And what's the alternative? You're touching budgets yourself on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday every week.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, it doesn't make sense. Okay. So I want to go back to something else you said, which is this client that had 1,500 assets. One of the things that comes up a lot is creative. What you said, those assets were from their seeding efforts, like just them seeding to influencers.
Mm-hmm.
And so
they had a ton of unused content there.
Was it just the kind of stuff where like influencers posted and they captured the content and that was that?
Creators, customers, just people on social media, some influencers. When I say it's just people on social media posting about their product, they have a really good one. Man, I think the brands that have the most opportunity here are the brands that have a ton of social buzz around them. Because I would say 90% of those brands aren't following up for usage rights to that content and repurposing their ad account, which is just a massive unlock of creative.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what was going on for this brand.
This brand had done it though. They already had reached out for usage rights and they'd already grabbed the content.
No. So we said, actually they did do that. They did do that. So yeah, we had all of it ready to go at our disposal.
They just hadn't deployed it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so they were a little bit of an anomaly in that sense. Most brands don't even fall for the usage rights. So like, oh, this is good.
It's time for you to get the highest quality event tracking, the best quality pixel data sent from your Shopify store to your Facebook ads account. And you should do that with the same tool that I use, which is called BILY, BILY.ai. BILY is an incredible tool that gives you 100% server-side tracking for your ads, for your Shopify store, so that you get the best quality event matching from your store back to Facebook ads that's possible. What that does for you is it gives Facebook both the most accurate data and the most data so that it can optimize the best, and its dashboard reports the most accurately for you. I know this is real and that it helps because I do it with all of my clients, just about almost all of my clients. We've moved to BILY, including testing BILY head-to-head against other third-party pixel options, and especially against the native Shopify Facebook ads integration. BILY has crushed them all in head-to-head tests. And if you go look at event match quality scores in Events Manager, on top of the ROAS reporting that happens at the level of A/B tests in Facebook ads when you run BILY against other pixel options, and I have done this multiple times, you actually see better event match quality in Events Manager as well, which is the most objective measure I could think of to say that Facebook ads is getting more and better data from BILY than from other tools. So go to BILY.ai. You can get started for $1 for the first month. Test this yourself. Just start with $1, run the same side-by-side test yourself, and see how this works. It's incredibly easy to install. It's like literally a couple clicks to get things going. Set up a new pixel with them. And you can also use it, by the way, for a total overhaul for GTM, for Google Tag Manager. So you can get like one-click install for GA4, Google Ads, a bunch of other channels as well. And they're even building attribution tools into BILY. It's really awesome. So go to BILY.ai to get started with BILY today. Get 100% server-side tracking with the best tracking and most affordable option I know of in the space. So you guys used to frame yourselves as an influencer marketing agency, and then you didn't do that anymore, right?
Right.
Talk to me about, because I'm actually really interested in this question. One of the questions I have is just like, if manual bids is driving the strategy of media buying here, then it creates this incentive to go and generate a whole bunch of content creation. I just put out some stuff. I just released an episode about sort of a new plan I have for how to turn, the way I framed is like one idea into 300 ads. On the content creation side, that's with an internal team. You think about Jack Rubin came on, one of your clients. He talked about just like a team of 12 people or something like that, like delivering, I think he said 250 concepts in a month or something, like just insane volume of output, right? But another thing that you guys used to talk about a lot publicly was influencer seeding, and then influencer seeding for feeding the ad account. So like, what happened with you guys? How did you end up being a really like true full like e-commerce growth agency and media buying agency as opposed to an influencer agency? And I have questions for you about the sort of influencer strategy you guys had trumpeted a lot, and is that still working? So answer my first question first, which is like, what happened to Kinship? And then in my second question, I want to actually talk about the influencer strategy a little bit still too.
Yeah. That's a big bite. So where do we start? I think we start, to where I originally got my initial start in this space was at Common Thread Collective. My first meeting was with Andrew Ferris. This is right out of college. So take us way back. You were my first meeting. It was great. And look at us, full circle here. But from that place and working with Taylor Holiday, working with Andrew, we were able to see that UGC style creative worked quite well, right? And so the whole birthing story of Kinship was, and then partnering up with Cody over at Kalo, who did influencer seeding at a really robust scale, and how that created a lot of UGC in a very cost-effective way that also lended itself to social organic buzz. So those combinations of things, the entire intention behind it though was creating mass UGC, content production to supplement ad accounts. Right. That was the entire intention. The intention behind it was supplementing ad accounts with a lot of creative. What we came to find out, though, was not everyone ran ad accounts in the same way that we would do so. And the background that we came from, the ecosystem we came from, which was, cost controls and running these things cost effectively. So I think that as the founding story ultimately led us to inevitably run ad accounts within a short window of time, just because, hey, we're giving over the content to other brands to manage it on their end, and we'd get visibility in the ad account and see that, they're picking and choosing which content to run out of the hundreds of assets that we would deliver to them. They would choose their 5 favorites, and then they would run it in a highest volume campaign, and then we would get blamed for performance. And so whenever that's the case, you kind of got to take things into your own hands and say, okay, we actually just need to start running this now. There's no reason why you shouldn't be running everything. You're leaving out so much on the table. So
like the exact scenario you just mentioned.
Exactly right. So we very quickly actually started running ad accounts. And that was the next progression. I don't know if we want to pause it, but we can keep going.
No, it's good. So, okay. So you started doing that. So the influencer strategy didn't go away. It just, in fact, became a development of the influencer strategy.
Part of the system.
Because you realized that people were not taking it as far as they needed to go. Right. So,
right. And you already touched on it, right? Like within a cost control environment, within a manual bid environment, what does it become about? Like, let's give this ad account as many opportunities to find success against our cost control as we possibly can. So creative volume, it's a huge opportunity for unlock performance and scale against your target performance.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do, and what Influencer Seeding did really, really well and still does very effectively, is it creates this massive pipeline of volume of diverse creative too, which is Meta constantly emphasizes. You want diversity in your creative. Again, seeding lends itself to that at mass scale constantly. Yeah. So it's just one of these pipelines that we have internally to create volume and diversity within our accounts.
So you guys still do this as part of your service. The
still do seeding.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, great. And let's talk a little bit more about that for a second. So
please.
So generally speaking, what are the stats these days on what a brand ought to expect with their influencer seeding efforts? Like, if I reach out to, let's just make the numbers easy, 100 influencers, okay, to seed them product, your guys' perspective is, and tell me if I'm wrong, reach out, palms down giving. You don't ask for anything in return. You just say, we love your content. We're going to send you product. Okay. Give me the percentages. What happens after that? Out of those 100 influencers, what happens next?
Yeah. About 20% opt in to receive your product. So that's 20 people.
Only 20 of them even opt in to receive it.
Yeah. So like our numbers, we typically identify and reach out to 500. And then on average, 20%, so 100 say, yep, Andrew would love to receive your product. And out of those 100, 30 of them end up posting 2 to 3 pieces of media each. But what I'll say is these are averages across all industries, across all categories. Okay, now you think about, in what setting does this work well? It's with products that people are proud to post about. So like a shirt that, covers up your sweating. For guys, like not a lot of guys are influencers. Not a lot of guys want to talk about how this shirt helps them stop sweating.
Right.
But on the other side of that, for a subscription, like a health and wellness brand for a female, like Bamboo Earth, they're proud to post about it. Great story, great founder story. It seamlessly fits into like routine-based videos. So depending on the product, it will lead to a lot more or less. But that's kind of the averages.
Yeah. Okay. So that means basically we reach out to 500 people and you get, let's call it 50 pieces of content, something like that. Maybe
60 to 90 pieces of media.
Oh, okay.
60 to 90 pieces of media. And that's unique, right?
Yeah. So what do you think the cost per ad is at the end of the day for that? On top of, before you say anything about any value of them actually posting it and reaching their audiences?
The cost is just the cost of sending out 100 products.
So do you guys don't charge separately for that part of the service these days?
Oh, we charge. Yes. I'm just saying, if you were to end up doing this internally, as a brand, it's just the cost of your products at the end of the day.
Or they can pay you to handle that. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And you guys,
and there's a tech stack involved of like the ID platform for influencers and, comms and the labor involved in doing all. It's more so labor intensive more than anything.
Do you guys count any value these days on the organic posting? Like, do you see anything from that you think brands should care about? Like, so before the piece of content makes it into the ad account, the influencer just posts it to their followers. Do you care about that?
We see it as gravy. We don't try to point too much attention towards it because at the end of the day, organic, you're not going to see this massive like spike in your, on Shopify sales that day. A lot of the time it could, like we have had seeding efforts lead to someone go talk about it on Joe Rogan, and then Joe Rogan's talked about this product 4 separate occasions. Like there's these stories that exist from seeding as like the origin of it happening. Yeah. But that's not what we're communicating to people. Yeah. It's the main intention is mass volume content creation to supplement ad accounts.
Yep. Okay. What about, let's see, the actual performance of those ads in the ad account? Do they work? Like that organic content, that kind of influencer content that is not a structured ad, et cetera, that may be good, maybe poorly shot, maybe shot plenty well, right? Really big range of quality.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny. We just had, and I pointed this out, my partner in Cosio, Cody, he spearheads sales and marketing for our team. And these situations constantly pop up, but one literally popped up yesterday. There's this ad from Seating or within the ad account, and you're just like, what is this? And their team internally just hired 2 new brand people on their side of things. And they saw this ad and they're like, hey, can we take this down? We just like, what is this? It's not, doesn't look like a beautiful ad by any means, so on and so forth. And we're like, well, pause. It's the 4th highest spending ad in your account. It's currently hitting over a 4 ROAS. Yeah. It's crushing, long story short. Yeah. And they were just like, what? Whoa, no way. So it's like these types of moments happen all the time. Yeah. And again, let Meta be the filter. Yeah. Right. Like there's no need for you or me to be the filter. Let Meta be the filter with the cost controls.
Especially when you've just totally, unless there's some way in which it's really going to damage your brand, you've just completely de-risked the thing, right? Because like Meta just won't spend on it if it doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm not in the business of like, I'm not going to repurpose any videos that are giving you a bad review or that are cussing or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but let's be open-minded here to not only pick our 5 favorites out of the batch of 300.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think most brands should be doing more, less, or about the same amount of influencer seeding as part of their strategy and part of their content creation methodology? Like, are brands still sleeping on this?
I think so for sure. Yeah. I mean, because again, we're speaking, ad accounts are all about creating content pipelines. This is definitely a strong one for that. Where like when you think about cost effective as well, it's incredibly cost effective, and you get and then not to mention, the other benefits of the organic social, and it inevitably is going to lead to great word of mouth about your brand. Your reputation's everything. You know, people hear about you just sending products, no strings attached. Your reputation is going to look great. So there's a lot of other benefits outside of just the ad account supplementation of mass content creation. But I would just constantly be looking for ways to do exactly that. What are ways we can create content pipelines as cost effectively as possible that help supplement this ad account for scale? And this is, I would say, people are sleeping on this more than anything to do just that.
So what else do you guys do to create ads at scale? Like, so this is something I talk about a lot, right? Which is like, now there's this incentive to go generate a whole bunch of volume of creative. But that means now you have to create a process to generate a bunch of volume of creative, and probably somewhere in there, maybe you disagree with this, there's a place for like quality and really honing on the message and some of those things. So I
don't agree. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. Okay. What else do you guys do to do this for your clients, or what do you see clients do? Like, how else should brands scale up their creative output to create this kind of thing?
Right. And I'm so glad you said that specifically, because we're not dogmatic on all you need to do is influencer seeding. Yeah. If you heard what Andrew and I were talking about previously, we're talking about diversification as well in the creative. So this is just one type of creative that we think you should definitely be leveraging, and in a way where it's like not super salesy, not scripted. It's native to the feed. It's organic. It's raw. Like that is a creative type in of itself. In addition to that, we do UGC creation with UGC creators, where we do have scripts where we can kind of piggyback off and iterate off of some of the top performing concepts from seeding. So we also do UGC scripted creative. We also do tap onto customers for content as well, going into some of the core people around your brand. We also do branded assets. So we do product on white. We want all of that a part of the media mix here in the ad account.
Yeah. You said customer generated content?
Customer generated content as well. Yep. So
that's just like post-purchase, reach out to somebody, have them send a review, you post it in the ad account?
We constantly have a flow set up with our brands where after they've been in the system for 3 months or more, we're following up with a flow to them saying, hey, in exchange for a $50 store credit, can you send us a video?
$50, that's the mechanism you use?
$50 store credit, $100 store credit, one of the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, why not at the end of the day?
Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Do you, that's interesting. Okay. So Kinship did those things. And it's, you take over ad accounts, you're running all this creative, and it works for your clients. That's what you're telling me? Brands should do this because it works for them?
Right. And I mean, it kind of gets into until it doesn't, I guess, and this is what leads kind of the next progression of Kinship and with Andrew. Just Andrew gave me some pretty sound advice, I think probably over a year or two ago now. Like, if you're going to be in this game, you got to be doing forecasting. And it just like spoke to me so loud and clear, just because the pain point of where we were at in Kinship was so profound. And we didn't know when things were going wrong, right? Like, we don't know what the ad account target should be if we don't have visibility into top line revenue goals and profitability goals and everything that makes up that formula. So that was definitely the next progression of Kinship, and a huge value add to us
you
guys
know do forecasting as well and all that. I mean, this is a classic thing I've experienced with brands, which is like, in my early days at Common Thread Collective, I would say to clients, like, okay, so what's your ROAS target? And they would just say whatever number. And it was pulled out of nowhere. And so eventually, like, certainly CTC did the same thing where, and you guys as well. And this is what I do with my clients now too. It's like, you say like, well, I'm not just going to receive a number from you. I'm going to help you think about it. And it is a real service to brands, right? They don't know how to think about what number they should be targeting a lot of times.
No, and it's so evident, right? Like, so as soon as we onboard a client, you help them identify that blended acquisition media efficiency ratio target, and then you help them set in-ad account targets based on that target. But that entire exercise, you realize, wow, very, very few people know how to do that competently. And then you add in the layer of like, so I just had a brand too. This I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on this. We have a health and wellness brand, subscription type brand. That's one of our clients, and they're trying to go after a 4 ROAS. And basically they were like, we want to go after a 4 ROAS because Bombas went after a 4 ROAS in their first order, their first order contribution margin.
The sock company.
Positive. Exactly. Right. Apparel, clothes. I was like, wait, well, hold up, man. Hold up. Because I'm trying to advocate for like a 1.5. Yeah. Right. And ultimately, I'm telling them, I think it's going to get you to far more profitability. We're going to be able to spend more. We're going to be better leverage against your OpEx, all of that. And I also like, Bombas is incredibly different. They have terrible LTV, like apparel, like that category, terrible LTV. Like, they need to be first order profitable. It's not. I actually bet it's better than you think. But your point's taken. Really different. But like generalities though. Yeah. And their LTV is through the roof. Yeah. And so it's like, let's say their LTV was terrible, the retention mix was terrible. Right. Like, they have to be first order profitable. That's not you. And like in your space where you have subscription, your LTV is really high and your competitors have really high LTV, they're going to be willing in the auction on Meta, on these ad channels to go after customers way more aggressively than you, to where if you're going after a 4 in that auction, there's not gonna be any customers left for you at the end of the day. So it's just a completely different auction by brand category. But we previously weren't able to have those conversations. We didn't have a seat at that table. So now it's incredibly different in our ability to come alongside partners in that way.
That makes sense, because that can totally hamstring you and the brand if they have a target that's actually not very helpful for them. That's
so many moments when a brand would dictate the target and then things would be going great. Then the next month they're actually like, oh, this actually was incredibly unprofitable. What are we doing? And it's like, oh, we're blind to that.
So what else are you just like sort of seeing in this space right now? You guys, so now you're forecasting for brands. You're running meta ads, you're doing seeding for brands. That sounds like all that sort of roll it all together. That's the core of the service, right? Basically all those elements.
System, creative pipelines. So content, we're doing creative for our brands. We're running the ad account and we are doing forecasting for them.
Do you have any like sort of observations? What's top of mind for you right now when you look at what's happening for clients in the e-com space? What do you just sort of see across the landscape of your clients?
Something that I'm really bullish on is what I kind of just touched on. The people that can afford to acquire customers at the highest clip due to their LTV and due to the retention metrics that they have are going to be the clear-cut winners. And if you can't afford to do that, you got to die in business, in my opinion.
Yeah. Or sometimes it's just margin. It's just pure margin, right? Like I have a client who's just really, really high margin. And so they can just spend a lot on acquisition because they don't have to have a very good
one way or another. You got to be able to, and there's different levers that allow you to do that, right? Margin, LTV, so on and so forth. But what about you? I'm actually curious.
I mean, I think it's a good point. This is like, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and it is framed like there is this thing, which is like, there's a first principles idea here, which is that like, what makes a good e-commerce business a good e-commerce business? And you know, there's a couple elements of it that we're sort of so used to that we forget. So one of them is that like, I ship the product from my warehouse to your door, and that's part of what makes it good. And there are some mechanisms for which like there's some products for which that is a really good way to experience the product. Like supplements is a great example of this, where it's like, it's actually way easier if I can just get, if I'm going to take a supplement, a pill every day for 30 days, right? It's actually a much like that delivery mechanism for the product is meaningfully better and more convenient for the customer than it is to go to a store and buy it. You know, the same is true for the subscription element of those brands, you know, where it really is actually better for me to have it on a subscription, because then I won't forget to take it. And if the brand is being honest and the supplement's really helping people in some way that's significant for them, like, yeah, they should take it every day. You know, it could be really good for them and could make a difference in their life. And so, so that mechanism, just like not having to think about it, is really great, you know? So like, that's one of those things where I think like, okay, that actually makes it a good business in that respect. It probably can't be too expensive to ship, or else this is probably not the ideal way to do it. Like there's other elements of these things. This is where like apparel is sort of has some things that are great and bad about it as an e-commerce business. The bad thing about it is that you can't try it on. That is actually and so really apparel businesses all get killed on return rate. You know, this is like a real problem for their margins. Okay. On the other hand, the good thing about it is that you can browse a collection from one apparel brand that you like really easily. Excuse me, I just held back a yawn. I was out late last night. I'm
boring, folks.
No. No, I was with a friend late last night. So that is like really nice, because like if you want to go look at like 8 different color variations of a shoe from the same brand because you like the shoe, but you want to find the right one for you, like D2C, like shopping that on a website is like a lot better than it is elsewhere. And I think what brands have to think about is sort of like how, and there's a bunch of other things you could say about this. Low OPEX as a percentage of revenue is another major element that makes D2C work. The illustration I always use for this point, right, is it takes the exact same amount of money to design and send an email for 1,000 people on a list as it does to send it to 1 million people. And so like scale creates, but you know, obviously like the designer's time is amortized across a lot more customers, you know, with that group of 1 million versus 1,000. So it's just, it creates margin, right? So there's just these elements like that. Obviously, value to weight ratio, this notion that like, you know, if it's cheap to ship relative to how big it is, you know, and how much it weighs, like that's a big deal. So there's all of these things like this. And I think what brands do have to think about is like, what is my advantage in this thing? Like how can my business uniquely succeed in e-commerce and leverage this mechanism of e-commerce to create value for myself? Or do I need to get out of the e-commerce game and like e-commerce becomes a channel in a larger business instead of like, you know, a core thing? You know, you go back to Jack Rubin, who talked about like, I think that's a perfect example of a business that makes a lot of sense for e-commerce, where it's like really nice to be stocked up for a long time on cleaning supplies and to not have to worry about sort of running out there. And, you know, if you can make the subscription timeline work, you can basically get a sense of when people are refilling and how much they're cleaning, you know, he's got, you know, clean, like it's great. It's a great mechanism for it. You ship the 1 glass bottle to start, and then you get little refill packs. And that's probably better than like going and trying to find those things in a store and you pick the exact scents you want or whatever, you know, that's just like, it's a good experience. Right. So I think that basic point is that there's a genetic way in which the relationship between the customer and the brand exists. And in some way there has to be leverage in that relationship for D2C to be great. If you can do that, then you can use tools and tactics and strategies like we're talking about to grow a really, really good business. But you have to be really clear about where that thing is in your business and what makes that a good business, you know?
No, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. And so you mentioned LTV. I think margin is the other really obvious one. But yeah, I think OPEX as a percentage of revenue is always a big one too. What's that?
And then acquisition.
Yeah.
And how do you make that as effective as possible at scale?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And there's actually TAM is another one that people like underrate here, which is like, if you actually just have like a huge, it's just like everybody wants to buy your category. Like this is where apparel again can be really good. You know, this is why there's a million t-shirt brands in space. Like, just like,
huge.
I don't know. People need to buy a lot of black t-shirts, you know, like it's just like, there's value in that business for that reason, you know? So, yeah.
I think one of the things that people have the hardest time doing, one, and we've already kind of covered it, like identifying that blended AMER target, translating that to in-out account targets, but then understanding like how the dynamic between spend and those targets and what leads to the greatest contribution margin. I don't know if you find that to be the case, but I find it with our clients, like that's where people struggle the most, is understanding what between those two, instead of just spitting out like, you know, I want a 3 ROAS or a 2 ROAS because that sounds good, but like what actual combination between the two lends itself to the most contribution margin and the most profit for your business.
Yeah.
But that's I'm curious to hear if you have the same thing. It's the hardest one in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I've seen some models that attempt to get at this, but I'm not sure any of them really work that well. Like, I think this is where I think like setting a P&L goal and then just trying to hit it and is like probably the way to think about this, and then deciding which side you'll miss on if you don't. Right.
And there's gotta be some trial and error, right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, right. And so it's like, if you're just like, hey, look, I want to do $1 million in revenue and it's going to be 500,000 in new customer revenue this month, and I want to do that at a 2-to-1 AMER, then you just decide in advance, okay, let's say I'm not going to reach that goal this month. Like you get to the 20th of the month and you're just like, we're just not going to hit it. Would you rather miss on the side of more volume or more efficiency? You have to have that question answered.
Always the chicken and egg.
Yeah.
Everyone wants both. They want to eat the cake too.
Right. But you're going to have down months. It's going to happen. So you just have to decide which one is better for your business. And I think this comes down to like goals and some of those things that are really less about mechanics and tactics and more about like, what are you trying to build and what are you trying to accomplish, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Your clients, do you think that your clients are pretty clear about the sort of P&L dynamics and the P&L design is the phrase I use that makes for a good business or not? On average, do they have a sense that like, okay, I got to keep my OpEx low. I got to, here's what's going to happen in my forecast over time if I acquire customers? Like, are they thinking that way? Or like, how much when you start to show them these things, do you think they're like, oh?
No, I think our clients crave, again, my favorites is like 5 to 20, right? So these are people that have proof of concept and they're really beginning to scale up that proof of concept. And I think what that means is some of them are like, a lot of them are bootstrapped and doing the best they can, but they crave like these rule of thumbs of like, and they don't really know what those rule of thumbs are. So sometimes we get a company that comes in, they have like 50% OpEx and we're just like, whoa, of total top line revenue. Right. And just like, hey, rule of thumb, go on a rule of thumb, get this to like 10%. The thinner you can get this, the better. Right. And so on and so forth. So things like that, I would say no. And if they do, it's kind of luck, I would say.
Yeah, this is something I always wonder about because like I talk with you, I talk with Cody, I talk with Taylor Holiday, like I talk with some of the people in my space, my team, my clients, and at this point, like the world that I am surrounded with has now either told me some of these ideas or I've told them some of those ideas, and there's like a shared strategic sensibility about it. But what I can't tell is like how much that's trickled out to a broader range of the e-commerce world, or if it's sort of like a message that needs to keep being spoken.
I think it's a message that still needs to be spoken. I mean, yeah, Andrew, you harp on thin margins. I mean, thin OpEx constantly as a top way to really scale your brand. And why wouldn't you? Yeah. And once people hear that, though, it makes sense. I think it's easy for people to digest and understand, just because you can easily scale your business at the same level of expenses. That's the benefit of being a direct consumer business at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Cool. Okay. What, any last things that we left off the table here? We got just a couple minutes left. Is there anything burning for you guys at Kinship that you want to make sure we get to? Any tactics, anything at all?
I miss Andrew Ferris, man. I wish I could see my guy more. That was the burning statement in my heart that I've been trying to say this whole time. But no, man, at the end of the day, Kinship, it's a system, not a service. Cody always likes to say that as well. you want to do all these things. You want to get creative pipeline. You need to understand your forecast. You need to understand, your top line and revenue goals, your profitability goals. You need to understand how that ties to an AMER target. You need to understand how that ties to in-ad account targets, so on and so forth. Yeah. So, and then to be able to hit those ad account targets, creative.
I think that's really helpful. You give people a whole strategy sort of lens through which to view their brand, and like, here's all the elements that have to do that. Media buying becomes one portion of that, but it's actually a whole bunch of other stuff in the midst of that as well. I like it. Let's say I want to work with Kinship. Where do I go to do that?
Kinship, KYNSHIP.co, not .com. So .co.
Link is in the show notes.
Links. There you go. Super easy and super seamless right there. But yeah, and then go to the website and submit a form.
Follow you on X at Taylor Lagace.
Taylor Lagace. That's right.
Link for that is also in the show notes if you want to go do that. TL, thanks for your time today, man.
I miss these, man. We can go down a million different rabbit holes.
Yep. All right, man. Peace.
Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Do follow up with Kinship if you're thinking about working with them. They are awesome. I'm a big fan of Taylor and Cody, and they're just great guys. So who do really good work. Do also follow up with BILY to get 100% server-side tracking for your e-commerce business, for your e-commerce store, for your Facebook ad account at BILY.ai, and subscribe to this show wherever you're watching or listening right now. I've got more great content coming, a whole bunch of great interviews lined up that you're not going to want to miss. Thanks so much. You can reach out to me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com, or on Twitter @AndrewJFerris. Links for all that in the show notes. I'll talk to you next time.